right, this is my presentation for the evaluation, modification, and selection of books for a student based on informatics and analysis of student data assignment for the LITE 518 course. So basically this is just an assignment showing differentiation for student learning. The student that I chose to differentiate for is one of my students with autism. And because I honestly don't have a lot of students with IEPs, and the students who do have an IEP, they're not very severe. So I really don't have to modify texts very often for them. I usually just explain the text a little bit more in depth for them, but this was a good activity for me to do if I were to need to do this for a student with a more severe IEP, or if I were to teach younger ages. So the book that I chose to modify was The Little Red Hen, and I chose to modify this book because it is related to agriculture, which is what I teach, and I just thought that it was good, and there was an online PDF version, and it worked out well. So I went through and I edited each of the 21 pages of the book, just a couple of those, and essentially, you can see differences in the picture on the left and the picture on the right. And that is the modification. And so the steps that I took to complete this was to, first of all, select a book for the class to read, which is what I did. Or, if you were to do this activity in your classroom, you could let the students select the book. The second thing you do is find an electronic copy of the book. If there's not one, then you can obviously take a picture of the pages. Or you might have to type your modifications and print those, and have the print copy of the book that your students are reading. But again, with this activity, I just went with the electronic copy. And so what I did was copy and pasted the pages of the book into a Google Slides presentation 2 times, because I left the original version on there in case there were words that the student did know that I wrongfully assumed that they might not. But the copy is there on the right in case they do need assistance with some more advanced vocabulary. So I left both copies of the book on there, and then I actually modified the text. I read through it to make sure that my modification still included the overall meaning of the text versus just some of the specific vocabulary. And then, the last thing that you can do is actually print off the pages and give to that student. But some of the specifications that I chose to use, instead I wanted to include that plants were grown outside on the ground instead of perhaps using the word garden. That might be a little bit easier for a student to understand. And again, I just made the text a little bit simpler for a student to understand. Just like right here, I omitted the word grain, and instead I used the word one little piece of wheat instead of the word grain. So, but if the student did want to know what the word grain is, they could use the Chromebook to look it up, or they could ask me and I could easily tell them. Or they could be able to connect that a grain of wheat is one little piece of wheat. But yeah, so I went through, and again on this slide, instead of each of the animals having a quote that they said, I just said none of them wanted to help her, instead of each of the individual animals saying no, that they didn't want to. But yes, so I just went through here and modified all of the pages, and that's essentially it. And I definitely used these references in aiding my creation. It is definitely important, like was highlighted in the presentations, to differentiate for students always, whatever it is that we need to do. We want all students to be able to participate as independently as possible, like was highlighted in one of Dr. P's prezzies. So, again, I really benefited from this, and I will be using it later in my classroom. Thank you.